Hi,
All right. Hi, guys. Welcome.
good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, it's actually strange how it's been like so light outside already. Oh, I guess that we did change the time, huh? That's also why.
Yeah, to make it brighter in the evening, but still it's nice that it's still bright.
Yeah, that's like my favorite thing about the summer. In the winter, it's like what depresses me the most when it's like 5 or 6 and like I have to go home and it's already like dark. The day is
Yeah,
over. I can't do anything possibly.
yeah, that was always much worse in Ireland because it gets dark at 2 or 3 during the winter and it's
Two or
really,
three, really?
yeah, it's too much.
Wow. But it must be in the summer. It must say actually get
Yeah,
really
until
late.
until 11 at night, so that's amazing.
Oh, that's cool. Awesome. All right. Well, we went from 0 to 7 in like a second here. So fantastic,
Yeah.
guys. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I think you know us pretty well by now. We've been doing these webinars for several weeks, but just in case you don't, I'm Thiago. I live in Milan. I'm from Brazil and I grew up in California. And joining me today,
I'm Sean, I'm Irish. I am 21 years old. I have been in Milan since September, working with Thiago in the school in Via Meraviglie.
exactly. And so, guys, as you can see in the banner down there, if you could also tell us your name, tell us where you guys come from. It's always lovely to get a little bit of info about who we're talking with. So, yeah, so just let us know. Keep in mind, as you probably know, that there is a bit of a delay. So, we'll get to your comments in a little bit. So, today we are talking about change and progress. That's our topic. And Sean, could you tell us what exactly we'll be touching on?
Yes, so in this focus activity, we are expressing attitudes to change, talking about changes in technology, changes in your city, Italy, and the whole world, and then making predictions for future changes.
Exactly. All right. So, just to get started, guys, so we're currently in a period of lots of different changes. I think some people have been more productive than others. I see so many people exercising, doing online courses, etc. I certainly have not been that productive myself. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about change. So we have three questions there. Feel free to choose one and you can answer it in the comments. So we have question number one. How do you usually react to change in your life? So is this something that you welcome? So you like change? You constantly need a challenge? You need something new? Or do you just prefer things to stay the same? And if change happens, how do you react then? And two, are you good with new technology? And three, do you prefer things to remain the same or do you need change? So I know, Sean, from talking to you in previous webinars, so you said that you're naturally, you tend to do things the same way, right? You're not one to want a lot of changes in your life, at least like day to day. Are there
Yeah.
any changes that you do appreciate, that you do welcome?
Yeah, I do. Again, in the day-to-day things, I tend to be a creature of habit. I have a routine and I generally stick with that. But for bigger things, I get bored if I'm always in the same context, the same people. I like to kind of meet new kinds of people. That kind of change I enjoy.
Hmm.
Yeah, partially why I left Ireland. I wanted that was a big desire for change on my part. So that kind of change is positive for me. Do you like change? What kind of change do you like?
Yeah, I think generally I do. I do like change in general, but there are certain things that I do kind of resist. Like a silly example is for if I go to a restaurant, for instance, it's really hard for me to order something different. I tend to like stick with one thing in that one restaurant, and I don't really take many risks in that regard. Even though I am happy to try new food, I guess
Mm,
it's more of I know it's going to be good, and if I'm going to pay for that
mm,
food, I don't want to maybe risk not liking
mm.
something, I suppose. And so I think
Yeah,
that's one area that I don't welcome change as much. But other than that, yeah, I mean, my life is, I've been through so many different changes. I mean, even just if I consider all the places I've lived and all the contexts I've been in, it actually got to a point, especially when I moved to Milan, that I wanted more stability because I was just changing way too much. It was like every year, every 2 years, I was doing something different. I was in a new city. So I was like just craving like a house that I could keep for 2 or 3 years. That was it. But I do get bored after a while as well. So
yeah, it's kind of elusive balance that you're looking for between good changes, bad changes, things like that. It's
hmm
tricky.
yeah. So here we have Valentina who's telling us. She says, "I usually react to change." So in that case, Valentina, I would recommend telling us how you react to change. So do you react well? Do you react badly? So it's maybe good to put an adverb there. But yeah, so I usually react to change my life. I prefer changing places, prefer and how you spend your free time. Yeah, so just all right. Let me just send you a correction so you know. So maybe I would say here, I maybe even like I like changing places, or I like moving even. I like moving places, and how I spend my free time. And the difference between like and prefer is that prefer, it's like something over another, whereas like can be just a bit more general. So in that case, you could say, I prefer changing places over spending how I spend my free time. Because then see, you're kind of comparing the two. But a nice example. Thanks for sharing that.
Hmm.
Yeah, so guys, keep the comments coming. All right, we'll get to them. Here we go. We got Marta who says, I like changes, especially good changes like new people, experiences, and jobs. I don't very much like the monotony. It's so boring. Okay. Yeah, nice word there,
A
monotony.
great word, yeah.
Yeah.
Monotonous. Yeah, I'm the same. I can find a particular context or a place very monotonous, given enough time there. Yeah, I felt it in my home in the countryside. Then when I moved to Dublin, I felt it there. Not yet in Milan, but we'll see if I have the urge to go somewhere else and
Yeah,
why.
sure. And what about technology? Do you consider yourself someone who's good with new technology, Sean? Do you adapt well to it?
No, I don't. I'm very bad for my generation because I grew up with technology. Actually, both of my parents are very good with technology for people their age. I was always around computers, but I just don't have the mind for it. If there's a kind of bug or an issue, I don't know how to fix it. I
hmm
don't think in that way. And so I find that I'm getting worse and worse with every year, even though I'm still very young, because it
Sure.
keeps moving faster and faster. If there's a very new phone or even using Zoom, which so many people say, oh, Zoom is so easy, it's so intuitive. I struggled with it,
It
I
takes
must
a
say.
while. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I
Hmm.
think for me, I think growing up, I was better at it. Also because I guess I was more curious. I remember like being able to just do so much with computers, like being able to download things, like figuring out how to like bypass like one thing or the other. Um, but I think, yeah, growing older, I also think I get worse and worse every year. And I don't know why. I mean, of course, they do get more complex as time goes as well. Like one thing I still fail to fully grasp is the concept of the blockchain. For example, I've tried, like watching videos and like really reading how it works. Like it's still so foreign to me. I just don't get the blockchain. So, and I know that's like such a big thing nowadays with cryptocurrencies, and have all these people making these bold claims about how it will change every sector, but I just don't understand. I can't grasp it. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think
another one that not necessarily that I don't know how to use it, it's just that I don't understand is TikTok, which is kind of this new thing
yeah.
for a generation or two below us. I just don't understand the point. Is kind of it's really a spiritual not keeping up with technology at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, TikTok, that's true. It's something I don't use. I mean, I see some of the videos that make it to Instagram, but not directly
Yeah.
through TikTok. But that's certainly a big one. So let's see, Valentina, I like changing experiences with the same friends. All right, so you like to keep the same people, but doing different things with them. Cool. Louisa says, I'm aged, but I try to use new technology. Cool. So you try to adapt. Whereas Marta's telling us that she's got a big problem with technology. My PC doesn't understand me. Yeah, cool, guys. Valentina says it's very boring for me knowing new technologies. Yeah, you can even say here, Valentina, maybe it's better getting to know or even getting comfortable or learning about new technologies, but cool.
Hmm. Louisa says, I'm retired, but I think that the new technology is useful and could be used by everyone.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's technology is so useful, but it's just that more difficult to use
Yeah.
as there's more and more and more of it. And Beatrice says, Hi, good evening. I'm Beatrice. I think that depends on the change. So, on the change and depends. Usually, I react well to change because I think it's important to keep up with the times, plural. I don't know if it's correct to keep up. Yeah, those are some kind of existential questions. I mean, sometimes maybe it's better not to keep up with the times if the times are going in the wrong direction. It's difficult to know sometimes.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, obviously, with this, speaking of technology, we've all had to adapt quite a bit to new technology during this time. Certainly for us, teaching, I've never used this platform we're using right now, for example, giving lessons through YouTube. It was a big, learning curve at first. So I think we're all kind of adapting to this new reality, surely. And
Mm.
Valentina says today teenagers have many chances to understand different technologies. Yeah, that's true. Although I will say, from this is just purely anecdotal because it's just my personal experience, which is very limited. But working with younger students in middle schools and high schools nowadays, so people who are in school now, they actually seem less like addicted to technology than I even see my generation or older generations. I don't know. At least it's a sense that I got. I've actually seen young people like not wanting smartphones, for example. I teach an exam lesson in a high school here in Milan. And I noticed like there's no problem with them being on their phone during class, which I remember back in my day was a huge thing. Even just texting, because we didn't have like the touch screen.
Mm.
So
Yeah, maybe because they grew up with it, it's not so they've learned to use it properly. Yeah.
yeah. And also yeah,
Mm.
they started using it while also getting the message of how dangerous it can be. Whereas yeah, if it's something new, you just get too excited. I don't know.
Yeah.
So all right, guys. Really nice contributions. Thank you. Uh, So here we have another question. Sean, do you want to read this one?
So shifting sands. Which areas of life are most subject to change? make a list. So in the comments, come up with some ideas about things that are subject to change, things that are likely to change, things that are, it's very probable that they change in life. And the phrase shifting sands, it comes from a kind of hourglass, which I'm not sure if you know what that is. It's a little timepiece with sand in it, and when you turn it over, the sand goes through. It's quite a metaphorical way of talking about the changing times.
Yeah, exactly. So what areas, guys, of life change the most, or in your experience, you've seen the most changes? So technology is definitely one. That's one we talked about. But there are other parts of life. Welcome, Marcelo. He says, I like changes. Life is always evolving. I like to keep up with technology. Nice language there. We're going to introduce keep up later. Actually, you guys are using some really nice vocab. Also, Beatrice here used keep up with. Nicely done. So yeah, so what are some other changes do you think, Sean, while we're waiting for these guys? So we mentioned technology, that's a big one. We mentioned maybe changing places, right? Moving to a different city.
Yeah.
Anything else that comes to mind as a big one?
Well, I think just in our lifetime, in the last few years, politics is changing so
Mm.
much. Since 2016 in the States, it's been, and Brexit, it's just been a whole different world of politics. You know, I don't, for me, it's not a positive change, but it's
Mm-mm.
the
I agree.
divisive of
It's very
the.
unprecedented, at least in our lifetime, to see how it's almost like truth doesn't matter so much nowadays. It's
Mm,
all about the big statements. And it doesn't matter. It's about causing, like, creating emotion. And even if, the media is out there saying, this is a blatant lie, it doesn't seem to matter that much. It doesn't, like, politicians don't seem to lose that much support because of that, which is something that I felt in the past. People would resign over a scandal, over saying something they shouldn't have. But now it's like it almost feels their popularity. It's quite
yeah.
unique.
Mm. Louisa has a good suggestion. She says jobs, especially in this time. Especially is with an S, so I'll spell in the chat. Yeah, she says young people have to change jobs and adapt to the different situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think certainly for our generation, they talk a lot about the kind of the gig economy. It's a kind of a new buzzword, which is that we don't really have the opportunities for very stable employment situations. We do sporadic once-off contracts. We change jobs a lot. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of change in our careers. Do you think the gig economy is a good thing or a bad thing?
Um, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I think our systems are created in such a way that if you're kind of hopping from job to job a lot, it's hard to get stability. It's hard to even kind of go up in terms of your salary, which is something that you could get more easily if you're still kind of going through a traditional, more linear growth within the same company or within the same field. But yeah, because I think it's one thing growing up, we kind of grew up with this idea that, I mean, a stable job is important, but it's about what do you want to do? What's your passion, right? And it's hard to put that aside. I certainly, I seek so much meaning in jobs. I feel like I need to be
Mm,
doing something that fulfills me and it just brings me
mm,
satisfaction in so many levels. Whereas, when I think back, even just to my parents, they were just happier. Just, it's a stable job. Like, it gives me an
mm,
income. I go, I do my hours, I'm done. So yeah, it's definitely a big difference.
mm.
I think that's what Marta's saying here as well. I think that nowadays a job is one of the areas that's most mutable. Oh, what do we say mutable? Because you can never say to mutate. I guess that's fine. Mutable. Good one.
Yeah,
Or
maybe.
changeable, yeah, something like that. There are new jobs like bloggers, influencers that weren't imaginable a few years ago. Yeah, influencer, that's an interesting one for sure, because people can make so much money like that. And you're right, even just a few years ago, wasn't such a thing.
Mm.
Um, Here, Valentina says, I like moving to big city to change my routine. I like changing jobs when I have the opportunity to increase my salary and skills. Cool. And in the past, it was easier to have a sure job sometimes for all. Yeah, here I guess you could say a secure job in this case, Louisa. So you have like job security. You know, it's going to be stable as well, a stable job. Yeah,
I think ideally it would be possible to have a stable job or to do different things and change. But it seems that once you had to do the stable job thing and now you have to do the gig thing, there's no choice because even people who would like a stable job are in the position of doing random things just to get by.
yeah, it's a nice verb as well to get by, just to like to kind of survive,
Yeah.
get by. Um, where's my? Okay, I'm using a different computer today, like getting the keys. Okay. Um, let's see. Beatrice says, I think places where you live, it's too common in this time to change city, for example, or in the quarantine. That's a big change as well. Yeah, changing cities. That's definitely a big one. I think people are definitely more mobile these days.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I read an article that says that in the States, this is something that compared to the past, it's less common now.
Yeah.
People tend to stick to their areas more so than in the past.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's something that while in most countries the idea of accents and dialects are becoming smaller and smaller because there's just more people moving around, dialects are kind of disappearing. In the States, we're seeing a rise of that.
Really?
Yeah, because people are not moving
Yeah.
around as much.
I think in Europe, cheap flights has had
Mm,
a big impact because before we always had to fly to go maybe not that far geographically, whereas in America you could always drive.
yeah, that's true.
So now that it's an option to move quite cheaply, I think
And also
certainly my
the
generation.
legal possibility to do that, right? To just
Oh
move to
yeah,
another country and establish yourself there without much bureaucracy. Just move, it's
yeah.
fine.
I mean, really, I would say in Ireland, more young people leave than stay. And it's a negative thing, but it's very normal now because you get young people from Italy and other countries coming to replace us. It's a big
Yeah.
exchange across Europe.
Yeah, but it is something that some countries they talk about. It's the idea of the brain drain, right? As in
Mm,
um, that people study, they get the information, but then instead of contributing to the economy in that country, they tend to leave and look for better opportunities elsewhere.
yeah.
So cool.
So Valentina has to say, I like changing public relationship when I can meet a different style of life that changes my humor. I don't really know what you mean by public relationship, but we would say a lifestyle generally that changes your humor. You see, humor in English kind of means means something funny, whereas I think you mean your state of mind more so than humor. State of mind, kind of the way that you feel.
Exactly. And then Valentina also mentioned, I think you mean a loss, right? If you lose someone important, a loss could drastically change your life. And that's definitely true. It's something that luckily I haven't really had to deal with yet. I haven't had any major losses. I haven't lost any really close relative or
Mm.
friends for that matter. So, but yeah, I can imagine that losing someone so essential to your life must be really difficult to cope with.
Mm. It's definitely not really a positive change. Though it depends, some people make a change or make the most of negative situations.
Yeah. Louisa also says sometimes to change home, city, or country can be stressful because you have to adapt to a new situation, but on the other side, it can be exciting. Yeah, I would just say sometimes changing homes. Instead of the infinitive there, it's better to use the gerund. So, but yeah, certainly, Louisa, I definitely have to agree with this. I've changed, I've moved to different places quite a lot, and I agree it can be stressful. But yeah, it's very rewarding. You get to learn a lot, get new perspectives. So cool. Yeah, so here we have a list then of just different areas. I think you guys touched on most of these. We haven't really talked much about romantic relationships, and fashion is another one that we haven't talked about. That can also change quite a
The
lot. I
most
mean,
difficult by far.
yeah. One thing I have been maybe not surprised because I mean I guess you would expect that from like a fashion city such as Milan, but it's crazy how the fashion here changes so quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like growing up, it would take like some years before a new people would just be dressing differently. But here, it's like every year, it's like a different style, and you can really see that, and people stick to it.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah. All right, guys. So if you're writing anything, keep going. So some of you already mentioned a couple of these verbs here. We have some phrasal verbs that we can use to talk about change. So Sean, do you want to read the verbs and I'll read the definitions and you guys just match them for us?
So miss out on, get used to, keep up with, catch on to, make do with, and be left behind.
Exactly. And the options are to be up to date, to lose the chance to become lost or become separated, to settle for or to be content with, adapt to, and to realize / become aware of. So I think all these verbs are great. They're used a lot, very common.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, get used to comes to from the kind of the form I used to, which is used to talk about kind of habits and things you did in the past, and it's a bit of a weird one. We use it in many different contexts in English,
Mm-hmm.
but it's quite versatile and common.
So one that it's also a very modern kind of acronym. We talk about FOMO, huh? Which kind of goes with that first one there. So
Yeah.
FOMO, this is the fear of missing out.
Mm,
It's a sort of anxiety that, it's kind of growing. Psychologists are seeing more and more of this. Um, I think, social media has a lot to do with it. Instagram in particular tends to be a platform in which people are constantly sharing, what looks like ideal lifestyles that are perfect. And it's always the best dish and the best vacation. Even just relaxing at home is something so glamorous a lot of the time. And
mm.
people, when they see that, they feel like they don't live up to that expectation. They feel like they're missing out on what everyone else is doing. And so they get anxious.
Yeah. I don't get FOMO. I don't know what it is about me. I think maybe growing up in the middle of nowhere, I missed out all the time. I got used to
So you
it.
just got used to it. Cool. Yeah, so Beatrice, you are absolutely right there. So to miss out on something, just like FOMO, right, is to lose the chance to, just to feel like you're missing on an opportunity, or what others are doing but you're not, so you're missing out on it. Then we have to get used to. Marta says to adapt to something, and that's absolutely right. Yeah, you adapt to the situation. Like Sean said, he missed out on so much growing up that he got used to it. He adapted, so it doesn't affect him so much. Keep up with, that's a couple of you guys used that before. And that's absolutely right. So to be up to date, it's basically to be able to maintain the same pace as something else. So if you keep up with technology, as technology advances, you're able to maintain that pace. You stay on top of it. Then we have catch on to. Yeah, catch on to is a funny one because it's quite general.
And sometimes we use it in a similar way to keep up with, but not always. It has another implication sometimes.
Okay, so we'll just do the next one, guys. So catch on to, so according to, so the official answer is, so to realize, to become aware of, but it tends to be quite conceptual. It's the idea of like grasping in a certain sense. So it can even mean to understand, quite generic. But like catch on to, I just think of this. I think more of like this movement than an actual literal translation or an explanation for it. But yeah, good. Valentina, Marcelo, good job. Make do with, fantastic. Yeah, to settle for, to be content with. And I know in Italian you have accontentarsi, so it's quite similar as well, especially to be content. So yeah, if you cannot get, your dream job, you can just make do with a gig or something. So you just settle for that. And then, of course, to be left behind is if you cannot keep up with, you inevitably are left behind. So things move, but you don't. All right, so we're going to put them in context to hopefully clarify any meaning that might not be clear. So we have this text here, and you guys just tell us the order of these phrasal verbs, okay? So Sean, do you want to read the first paragraph and I'll do the second one?
Yes, so I find it tough too, the pace of progress in technology. While all my friends, the latest trends like tablets, smartphones, and other gadgets, I often find
Great. I don't want the most recent changes in technology. Using new formats and devices very quickly, even though other people are happy to the next best thing, I just have to be up to date with everything. So a good one, I guess, to talk about there, and then Marcelo, I see you have a question there. We'll get to it. Is tough. Pay attention to pronunciation there. It means difficult. So I find it difficult. I find it tough. So Marcelo says, I always confuse so catch on to and catch up to. Yeah, they're quite similar. We're only changing the one preposition there. Catch up to, yeah, they're kind of similar even, right? So to catch up to is, something is ahead of you and you're trying to get to that point. You're trying to arrive at that point that is ahead of you. It can even be your workload. Okay, if you have a lot of deadlines, you have a lot of things you have to do, you have to catch up on your work. You have to get to the point where you should be. Whereas catch on is more the idea of understanding, realizing, becoming aware, even adopting to a certain sense. So that's the main difference. Yeah, so I would say the key word for the first one is definitely pace. Should really help. Cool. That's right, guys. Find it tough to keep up with the pace of progress. And see, just Marcelo, to go back to your point from before. So if you don't keep up with the pace of something, you can always try to catch up later. So if you keep pace, you're never even left behind. But if you are left behind and you want to get to that point, you have to catch up. Let's see. So you guys think get used to. So while all my friends get used to the latest trends, like tablets, smartphones, and other gadgets, hang on, I'm just looking at the text again because I think it's another one for that. Yeah, okay. Really small difference here, I would say. Yeah, it's a get, because the actual answer in this case is catch on to. Because get used to is kind of the idea of adapting. Whereas catch on to is the idea of adopting, of grasping something. So if the trend is there, people can catch on to it. You can get used to a trend as well, of course. But getting used to the trend, it just means that you adapt to it, you feel maybe comfortable around it, it doesn't strike you as strange anymore. Then you can say, oh yeah, I got used to that trend. But to catch on, it just means that you're actually a part of it. You adopted that yourself. And I think in this context, it fits better. It's a very small difference. Yeah, exactly, Marta. Catch on.
Yeah, I think in this context, if you said, well, all my friends keep up with the latest trends, the meaning is the same.
Mm-hmm.
One instance where catch on to is very different is when you're talking about jokes. If you are playing a joke on someone and they don't understand that you're joking, it's very common to say, "Oh, she hasn't catch on. Oh, now I've caught on to the fact that you're joking." It's a context we use catch on to quite a bit.
Okay, so while you guys write your answers, because there is a bit of a delay, we're just gonna slowly go through these. So here, if you look at the word while, right, so it kind of gives you the idea almost it's gonna be the opposite, and there you go, perfect. So while my friends catch on to the latest trends, I often find and good job here, Louisa, you conjugated. Remember, a phrasal verb is a verb, so you do have to be aware of the tense. So I often find, I am left behind. Perfect. And then good, Marcelo, I think you got the next one. I don't want to miss out on the most recent changes in technology. Yep, perfect, Beatrice. I get used to using new formats and devices very quickly. And even though other people are happy to make do with, as we said before, to settle for. So it's maybe not your ideal, but it's just fine. The alternative is okay. You're happy with that. So even though other people are happy to make do with the next best thing, so not the best thing, but the next best thing. So the one that follows. I just have to be up to date with everything. So cool. So hopefully this all makes sense now, and especially now that you see it being used in the context altogether, you can also get some of the small differences between them. But if you have any questions, just let us know, of course. Okay. So now, guys, it would be great if you could use these new expressions while talking about yourself. So here we kind of have all those changes that we talked about before, all the different areas in your life. But if you want to talk about something else, if you want to talk about how your life has changed due to the quarantine, etc., feel free. We got the expressions here on the side. And Sean, here are 2 questions if you want to read that.
Yeah, so which areas do you find easy to deal with? And to deal with is actually another phrasal verb. It's to be able to cope, to be able to handle a situation. If you can't deal, you are unable to process, you're unable to accept a situation. And which kinds of change are most difficult for you personally? So, which are easy and which are difficult? And we have the areas: change in romantic relationships, change in friendships, change of city or home, changes in technology, change of job or study, change in fashion, change in way of life.
Exactly. So just let us know in the comments, guys, and try to incorporate the new language as well, all these phrasal verbs. So for you, Sean, which one would be the most difficult for you personally to deal with?
Yeah, I think changes in friendship I really dislike. I can't get used to a kind of when a friendship when you know when people change and you have less in common than you initially had.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to always try and maintain a friendship even if I have less in common with that person than I had before, because I really don't like when when you lose touch, keep in touch and lose touch, other phrasal verbs, because I think it's important to stay connected to people even if you go your separate ways, even if you change. But sometimes it does happen and I find it difficult.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Yeah, I think friendships is a big one. One thing for me that I find tough sometimes, and maybe this is due also to the fact that I've moved around so much and I've been in so many different contexts, is when I find it difficult to, when I have like people from different contexts in the same place. I just find it really hard to like manage that because I feel like I'm slightly different with different people in the different contexts, because we're talking really like
Mhm,
different countries and so different cultures,
mhm,
maybe even different languages. And so, you know, people tend to also have like slightly different personalities in different languages. And
mhm,
so I've been in situations before in which I just had, you know, friends that just are from completely different backgrounds. And it's fine. It's not, you know, bad or anything, but I do find it a little bit difficult to manage initially. It just feels a bit odd. I might not know how to behave. I don't know. Um, so that's
mhm,
like one thing that I find a bit tricky. But certainly, yeah, when things change, um, yeah, your interests change, and then trying to maintain that friendship, especially if there's a lot of expectations, I think.
mhm,
Um, I don't know about Ireland if it's similar to the US, but we tend to be, I think, see if you compare to Italian friendships in my experience. I think Italians would almost say like Americans are quite superficial with our relationships. We're kind of more of a hangout culture. You just spend time with people. Whereas I think here, friendships tend to be deeper. They take longer, for you to become friends with someone. But then once you do, there's an expectation really for you to stay in touch, etc. Whereas in the US, generally speaking, of course, this is a big generalization. People are just happy hanging out. And so even if you don't kind of stay in touch, it's fine, and I'll see you after in 2 years and it's cool. Whereas in some contexts, it will be weird because it's strange that you didn't keep in touch. So now obviously things are not going to be the same. So it can be tough to handle that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a beauty in kind of hangout culture where you feel that you can always adapt and you don't feel obligations to your friends. But personally, I love having very long-standing friendships with people that maybe I don't have much in common with anymore. I feel like it's interesting to see how their life is going, the way you diverge, the way you stay the same. And, even when I moved to Italy, I'm very confident that I maintain my friendships back in Ireland, and so far I
Hmm.
have. So that's a nice feeling, I think.
Yeah, one that I don't find too tough is changing of jobs. At least in my experience, I've always really enjoyed learning something new and adapting to a new kind of work environment. I guess I've never really had like a bad experience, and so that helps. That's
Yeah.
one I don't find too difficult.
I mean, in the very first jobs I did, I found the difference between education and working life very difficult because when you work, you kind of improvise and do things when you don't really know what you're doing a lot more than people tell you you're going to do. But at this point, I'm used to it. And I would say the ones that are least difficult, easiest for me is change in fashion because I wear this dress the same way. I always wear black and it never goes out of fashion.
That's okay, that's true. Awesome. So Louisa has some good expressions here. Let's see. So to change, so here you can just maybe use the noun, Louisa, changes. So changes in relationship, change in relationship is very difficult. I don't get used to changes in friendship. I keep up with change in fashion, but perhaps because I live in Milan. There you go. And Valentina says, I find it easy to keep up with changes in romantic relationships. It's very difficult for me changing in fashion. I don't get used to changes in fashion, but I prefer what suits me. So you don't need the two there. We just have what suits me. That's so funny that you find changes in romantic relationships easy, but not in fashion. Because
Yeah.
I would expect the opposite.
Yeah, that's a great trait to find it
Yeah,
easy changes in a romantic relationship.
exactly. So, guys, I think we are out of time here. So we're going to just wrap this up, unless you have any final comments coming our way. But really good participation. Thanks for all the collaboration, the questions, the examples. Yeah, nicely done. Anything else you would add, Sean, before we wrap this up?
No, just thanks to everyone. You used the phrasal verbs very well. So that's the main thing of this, I think. So thank you and bye bye, I guess.
Bye, guys. Have a nice weekend.
Yes, bye bye.